30 seconds, 205, 1/16. Numbers I never chose, but used anyway. You're not any different than me. We're all the same. These are the numbers that we always followed when it came to coffee, right? But we never really questioned it. We never asked those questions of why. Some of them are still very evident right now. They're very critical right now, right? But at the end of the day, we're just following the recipe, right? And as I sit here and think about this situation that we're in, I can't but help to think about is like, why? We're grown people, right? Recipes are supposed to be followed anyway. But then after a while, I hope that you start to second guess them. Not so much because they're wrong, but because you are who you are. You like what you like. And once we figure that out, the recipe is just a starting place. We are unique people in our own rights, right? And I think that's part of it. And I think the reasons why we hold them so dear to us is because somebody else told us about them. Sometimes they'll explain the reasons why they are what they are. But we never really challenged and tested them for ourselves, not to the extent that we will grow to understand them, but more to develop our own recipe, our own way of what we understand the coffee's doing for ourselves and for our palates. A lot of times it is based in physics, in science, in the way coffee works and what people have done before us, different tests, different associations telling us this and that about a recipe. But again, we have to challenge ourselves of asking why. For instance, why a 30-second bloom? It sounds cool. It sounds novel. But when you run it against a one pour method or just a couple seconds of bloom or whatever, you start to realize that coffee does need that time. But why 30 seconds? Why not 45 seconds? What about a minute and a half, all that good stuff? I have a refractometer. I depend on it heavily. You probably don't. You probably think it's BS or it's just way too many gadgets in coffee, which is perfectly fine. But we all have our tongues, our palates, things that we like, things that we don't like. And I guess what I'm saying here is that we can test it. We can see it for what it is. We can try a 30-second bloom, a 45-second bloom, a cold bloom, a no bloom, one pour method. We can do 2 or 3 pulses. We can see which one works for us. We can test it on different coffees. We can do all of that. We don't need any permission to do any of that. Even though if it is a recipe online for us or somebody that we have followed, we can test it. We can question it. And we can compare against the coffee that we're using at the time. And then compare it again against another coffee that we're using at the time to see if there's some correlation. And then we can start to think about a light roast, a dark roast, a medium roast, a high elevation, a Colombian coffee, a varietal that just keeps coming back to us. Those kind of things. And then we can make up our own decision, our own conclusion to this. Same thing with the ratios. Certain coffees, depending on the month, 1:16 works perfectly fine. Sometimes 1:10. I realized that a little bit later with this Nicaraguan that I was dealing with for the very longest. It didn't excite me. And not all coffees are. Don't get me wrong here. But it didn't do anything for me. It wasn't talking to me. And then all of a sudden, randomly, out the blue, I just didn't give a shit about it. Just making coffee for my wife. And I kid you not, it came alive. It was delicious. It was talking to me. I can actually decipher those fruity notes, those red fruit notes, those things that were more welcoming to my palate than what I thought. But 1 to 15, no. 1 to 16, 1 to 17, no. And then that was the case for 1 to 16. That was the case for a light roast of that same coffee, a medium roast, and also a dark. So if I would have stayed with somebody else's recipe or something that I inherited and then I just try to make it my own, if I stayed with that, then I would have easily written off this coffee. Easily. Because somebody told me that it wasn't supposed to work that way. It was going to be too concentrated. For you, for that exact same coffee, probably 1 to 15 will work for you. Then the water thing, right? You want to stay at 200, 205. Why? Are we taking that advice from somebody who strictly brews lightly roasted coffees? Things that are floral, things that come alive at that temperature? Yesterday, I tried that. I brew at so many different temperatures, but in this one in particular, same recipe, same basic recipe, 205 off this dark roast. It was extremely better. It had that aftertaste that just kept on lingering. Nothing about it was cool. Oh yeah, they did say go a little bit lower on a dark roast. What if I go a little bit coarser on that dark roast? That does change things, right? Anything and everything will work. That's the thing that I'm really getting at. But it works because we're trying to test it. We're trying to play around. We're not just taking everything that they're saying as truth, as fact. We have to challenge ourselves from time to time. For instance, I'll do a 30-second, 45 seconds, a minute bloom. I'll get an extraction. I'll see what I learned from that time. Then months down the line, half a year down the line, a year down the line, I'll test that thing out again. Because I'm at a different place in my life. And hope to God that I actually wrote it down too, because now I can see some correlation. It's just like when you go to the doctor. You want to see the charts. You want to see how things are changing, if they are changing. You want to check out your diet and stuff like that. It's always good to get a pulse of what's going on with your coffee journey. Question it all. I've said that many times. You know that. And the beauty of all this is that you don't need any special gear. You have your palate. You have your recipes that you've been doing. And then you ask yourself, why does it work this way? And here's the beauty of all of this. Even if you don't know why, you just know it works that way. And then you start to do it. And then you start to develop your own recipe. And then you start to come to the conclusion that this works for you just because of the types of coffees that you actually like. That's what I'm getting at. I want to give you this before we, stop talking about this and you to start to really brew your coffee. A couple of days ago, I don't know if I talked about it enough on here, is that I am doing other things beyond coffee to help challenge myself to see what it's all about. And one of them is making milk bread. And it's been many months since I've started making milk bread. I had a recipe that I started off with. I played around with it. I questioned why this, why not that. I discredited it when I start using all-purpose flour. It was soupy. It was nasty. It still finally came together, but something about it wasn't right. And then I used a bread flour in the mix. Tons better. A lot fluffier. A lot more consistent. Chew was great. And I just kept on going deeper. Then I used cake flour. Dense, hard. Probably because I actually kneaded it for about 20 minutes, which is probably long. And then I sat back and thought about it. And I was like, why is this working? Why is this not working? What's going on with the recipe that I'm doing? And then after that, I kept testing. I kept prodding the recipe. I started asking myself, why is it working? Why is it not working? And then this past weekend, I tried something crazy. I made it with Coke instead of milk. I did both, whatever. I guess the point is that I tried. I saw what it was all about. I wanted to see what was a big difference. It was a difference. You can almost taste it instantly. You had this chocolatey, sweet, cocoa type of aftertaste to it. It did mimic Coke. It was trippy to me. I actually liked it. My family thought it was crazy. Of course, they preferred the regular version, which is neutral. And then it started me to think about all the other things that I've done with this already. All the different ways I've changed the recipe. Done a 15-minute actual kneading process. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, even 30 minutes, which is out of this world. That's too long. It got to the point to where I was just trying and testing and just seeing what worked for me, why it worked. I was prodding that recipe. I even took out the tangine, where it's called, and then I made it again without it, with it, to see there's a big difference. I compared. I took notes. I started to change my recipe. The recipe that I was using called for 100 grams of sugar. It's way too sweet, so I cut it in thirds. I start crafting it for myself. I start looking at it for what I liked in bread. And then I started to realize that's exactly what I do with coffee. It's interesting that we take a recipe from somebody and we hold it dear to our hearts. But when it starts to not work for us, we start to blame other stuff. We start to blame ourselves, the ingredients, the coffee, our technique. Not our technique, but the recipe we don't really mess around with, right? It's either ourselves or other coffee, right? But I guess what I'm saying is that you don't know really what works for you. I've been talking to quite a bit of people who comment on the videos from time to time, and I'll put out a questionnaire. And it was interesting because I mentioned my recipe, the recipe that I use most of the time, right? 30-second bloom, because I want that coffee to get some time to like calm down. I do about 50 grams, no matter what I do, of that first bloom, right? And then after that, I do like an even amount. Sometimes it's 2 pulses. Sometimes it's 3. It just depends on the time. Sometimes it's 3 mainly because I'm bored and I just want to switch it up. But sometimes I just want a little bit more extraction. Sometimes I keep just the right amount of water in the bed. But depending on the coffee, I let it go really, really dry, because I want that boldness in the coffee. That's what I've noticed in my recipes. But the most interesting thing about all of this is when I start to actually talk to people, their recipes were different. I kid you not. It was interesting just listening to, watching what they were doing, why they were doing it. Kind of like picking up, understanding the situation for what it is. Some guy does the exact same recipe no matter what. Like four pulses here and there to get them kind of get to the ratio and everything. And I told them, that's fascinating. Because right there, that tells you so much about that person's personality, why they do what they want to do with their coffee. Some are more technical. Some have a laundry list of, I do this because of that, because I want to bring a little bit more out of the coffee. Not every day is different. It's like almost like you get a blank canvas and you start to paint. You don't realize what you're really doing, but you have a protocol. You have a situation for that coffee. You have notes probably. And that's the amazing part about all of this. We're just different. And that's a good thing. And I can tell you that from what I hear and gather is that those people have taken their time to explore, not take what somebody else has said to them. Sure, little tips in here about bloom time, why it matters. But at the end of the day, you're just finding things out for yourself. And that's what it's all about. So go explore, be happy, be frustrated, question, think about it, come up with your own recipes, figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and continue to do other stuff. Because that's how you're going to grow with this coffee thing. That's at least what I believe. Again, I'm trying not to tell you what to do. There's been a lot of people trying to tell you what to do. Stop this, do that. Don't ever do this. Fuck that. Do you? Question yourselves. That's what I got for you. This is Oki at Everyday Beans signing off. What do you think? Do you take it for face value? Do you religiously go at 205 because you are a lightly roasted type of person? Are you going to change it up? Let's talk about it. Bye.